Hi, welcome again to Dvija Projects. This is a session on how to align your project objectives. So it's important to understand the expectations first, right? In the previous lesson, we saw about you doing zooming in, doing some self-reflection in establishing what your expectations are, what skills that you should develop, or understanding what are the relevant skills that are needed for you to excel in a job in your domain of choice, and understanding where you stand in terms of what skills you already have, what are those additional skills that you need to build, and how you pick a project, right? Now, all these are setting those expectations. So there are your expectations, there are expectations from the industry, and not to forget the expectations from the college, your university, and your professor, which could be around the timeline, around the areas that they want you to work. We are now moving on to the constraints. You've done a great job in establishing what the expectations are from you, as well as from the industry and from the academic community. At the same time, it's also important that your project is able to, or rather, you will be able to effectively run your project considering all the constraints that can come your way. What are those constraints? There could be a constraint of cost, right? If you're doing an IoT project, there could be certain hardware that is needed. If you need to go out and enroll a lot of volunteers for, if you're a medical student and you need to enroll volunteers for whatever experimentation, and that also there's a significant consideration of cost that is involved. If you need to print a lot of questionnaires and then send them out in the market and or engage a market research agency, that's also going to have considerable amount of cost. In certain countries, in certain institutions, there is a budget earmarked for these students' projects, which may or may not be enough. So you got to be conscious of the cost as well as the resource availability. It could be hardware, software that you may require. It could be other people that you need to support you in this project. So it's very important to understand the constraints pertaining to cost and resource, as well as the schedule and time. Right now, time is the project schedule in terms of the completion date that's given to you by the university. Of course, most of the times these dates are not moved. And they are cast in stone. So it's very important that you do all your activities in a manner that gives you enough time to also document your findings from the project, right? So the scope and quality as well, right? You may have a great problem statement, but you also have to be quite reasonable, so that you're able to do it in the right amount of time, yet deliver a document wherein the quality of your document, the quality of research that is done is up to the mark, and also you're able to manage your scope. Right? There's no point in picking a project wherein you want to solve world hunger and you've got only 3 months to do it. Right? So please, along with expectations, have the cost, resource, schedule, time, scope, or quality. Understand the constraints to pick the right project. Finally, you may have, say, one project idea that's gone through all these stress tests in terms of meeting your expectations, and then also understanding the constraints, and then it's managed to clear off. If you have more than one, or even if you have one, with all the learnings you've got so far, it is good to refine your project. Right? So what was your initial idea? Was the groundwork done during the year? What's the feedback that you've got from professors or seniors? All the constraints that can impact or have a bearing on the successful completion of this project. With all those inputs, you then refine your problem statement, which basically is refining what is going to be your scope in that problem to solve. And also, try and define the end outcomes that can be delivered through this project. And finally, give it a nice name. It's all in the way you're going to brand your project. So a nice name always is quite inviting when people look at your project, right? So Finally, you're going to be moving on to the project planning. So this is the time for you to take ownership of your idea and advertise your idea, talk about it, and then get into the planning after you've given due consideration to all the constraints so that you can execute your project successfully. Right? So here are some helpful tips from us. So try and find the nucleus of your project idea, right? What is that core? What is that central theme of your project and everything that's going to go around your project, right? It could be that research, it could be that company profile, it could be that critical historical data. It could be that case study information from the past. So whatever that is, that's the core of your project idea. Just get a good understanding of what it is and try and get access. And of course, expectations of all the stakeholders. Get some timely feedback, and also understand, through your research, try and secure all the resources that you've already established that you need from your research. Try and secure their availability, and also understand the limitations of every other aspect of this project. It could be with cost, all the constraints that we saw on the previous slide, right? So what is it that can come in the way of your final result in terms of successful execution of the project? So this is the step, broadly speaking, right? So we have just gone through the design phase, and you have your problem ready and you're ready to run. It's going to follow by the whole design phase of with the problem that you defined. You're going to get data, you're going to do some number crunching, you're going to do some lab analysis, whatever is the project type that is relevant for you. You're going to design your experiments basically. Right? You're going to design what's that survey that you need to do. So you're going to design, you're going to get all that information. You're going to then move into the third step, which is to analyze and understand all the critical factors. If you look at the hypothesis in the design phase, you've also established what your hypothesis is, right? And if you refresh, these are not just some assumptions, but these are assumptions which are going to be backed by data to prove whether the hypothesis or the assumptions that you made, what we are also now calling as leap of faith assumptions, on how critical they are. So those are the results that are going to come off analyze, and then you would also start listing the solutions for these problems. You will also, again, go back to the same lab to prove if the solutions that you're recommending are going to give the desired results, which again is also going to be another hypothesis that you're going to prove that it works. Once you've done, it's time to do some good documentation around all the findings, after which you're going to conclude your project. And yes, very soon you're going to get ready to go have a nice party.